You'll find a Mets fan. Let's go. This is a Mets year. For all your Mets here, let's go.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets Hit Rob, and thank you for tuning in to the video prior of the midseason grades for our New York Mets. If you missed it, go back and take a look at it after the live stream. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of this live stream and the Mets second half preview. Hopefully everybody is enjoying the relaxation of no Mets games, no stress, no excitement, no craziness, no back and forth on Twitter, no comments on the chat and messages and craziness and the anger that all of our Mets fans are feeling. We will have that again tomorrow, right? The Mets are starting the second half at home against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Doesn't matter if it's the Dodgers, doesn't matter if it's the White Sox or any team right now. The Mets need to win, win, win. Very simple. It's not very hard. But it is important because the Dodgers are around the wildcard spot. You know, they're around that division in the West. They're in that wildcard spot. The Mets can gain. Look, they just got to win, right? Don't look who's in front of you. Just win. But it will get you a couple of games closer if you beat the team like the Dodgers because of the fact they're in that wild card mix as well. So, the New York Mets second half preview. 72 games left. What is it? What do they have to do? Well, a lot of people were like, oh, they got to win this many games. They got to win that many games. Remember last year, guys, 87 wins got the third wild card. Now, that's going to take a hell of a lot of wins for the Mets at this point to get the 87 wins. That's about 45 wins to be exact in 72 games. That's a lot of games in 72 games. They got to play well above what they did in the first half. But remember this. And I put up a poll on YouTube yesterday on my community page. Do you think the Mets team are underperforming or just a bad team? And I'm very glad that about 230 people voted and about 75% said underperforming. So what does that tell you? That the players that are supposed to be playing to the back of their baseball cards, if they do that, the Mets can easily win 45 games in the next 72. That is not 25 games over 500, right? That's not 25 games over 500. And I'm not a mathematician, but let me do the math really quick, right? Right? That's 45 and 27, right? So that is 18 games over 500, right? It's not, 18 games over 500 is pretty good. It's not great, right? There's teams in baseball that are 25, 30 games over 500. So, listen, it's not impossible, and I do believe there's a lot of underperforming here on this team. And you could say whatever you want about, you talk about Max Scherzer and Verlander. They both, even though Verlander has given up a lot of leads, has not pitched to what he's supposed to, they both pitched to a full run lower than what they did that previous month. So do they have to be great? No, because we know the Mets record when their pitcher goes 6 innings or more. It's about 22 games over 500. It's that good. And when you look at it, and again, this is not being positive, this is just looking at the facts and looking at the stats, right? There is about 5 guys in this lineup that are underperforming. Now, you could say it's injury. You could say they're over the hill. You could say bad season, whatever you want to say, right? You can go to Pete Alonso with the terrible average and lost at the plate. You can talk about Jeff McNeil. You could talk about Starlin Marte. You can talk about the DH situation, wherever you want to use. You want to put Vogelback in there? Perfectly fine, right? These guys, I understand that. But, Paul, what the whole point of the matter is, a bad team is they don't have the players that are good. That is not true. These are the same players. The majority of these players are the same players from last year that were very good, that won 101 games. So it's not about a bad team, right? It's very rare that a roster like the Mets has a bad team or a bad season, right? Are the Padres a bad team? They're only, 2 games better than the Mets, a game and a half better than the Mets? A lot of people think they have a way better roster than the Mets. Well, why are they only 2 games better than the Mets? Right? What have they proven that the Mets didn't prove? Because they're in the same boat as the Mets are. There's more talk about the Padres trading off Juan Soto and Josh Hader than there is the Mets trading people. So are the Padres underperforming, or are they a bad team? You could say it for many teams. I do think both of them teams are underperforming, right? Yu Darvish wasn't as good as last year. Like Blake Snell wasn't as good last year as he is this year, right? We can look at it from many different angles, but the fact is the fact. These are not guys that never had a good season or haven't been good recently, right? Jeff McNeil won the batting title last year. He's batting 60 points less, almost 70 points less in his average with basically no power, right? Starlin Marte nearly hit 20 home runs last year and batting 300. He's nowhere near that mark or that pace. And then we go back to another guy, Pete Alonso. He nearly batted 270 last year with all those home runs and all those RBIs. He's right near the Mendoza line. That is a huge difference. These guys are not playing to the back of their baseball cards from last year. If I were to give you stats from 4 years ago, you can get on me and say that's a bad team. But this is what they did last year. Is Alonso over the hill? Or he's just underperforming? Marte, if you look at all his statistics, and if you want to look analytical, if you're that type of person, if you look at Marte's swing percentage, the way his swing speed, his speed going down the line, running bases, the running bases are attack behind, but he's still faster than basically a lot of people in the league, and he still runs pretty damn well. I can't understand why he's underperforming, but he is, right? I don't see a guy now. He had major core surgery in the offseason. If that's the problem, we don't really know because he's playing every day. So when it comes to those guys, they're clearly underperforming. I'm sorry. When your batting champion is batting nearly 70 to 75 points lower this year, that's a huge problem because that's the guy that always got on base for the guys that are the run producers, the Lindoras, the Alonsos, right? Marte was one of the most clutch hitters in 2022. He's nowhere to be found this year. That's underperforming, right? Vogelback is bad. He was bad last year. He's bad this year. That's a bad player, right? That is the issue that I'm having, is the fact that too many of these guys are underperforming. Max Scherzer, underperforming. Verlander, underperforming. Verlander won the Cy Young last year. You can't tell me that he is all of a sudden completely washed up when he can go out and throw 8 innings and look great, right? Washed up means you never have a good start again. That's washed up, right? That's completely washed up. But we look at it this way, and we look at it like, let's see. What could the Mets do better, right? Basically everything. right? In June, it seemed like everything that could go wrong did go wrong, right? Missing pop-ups that could have basically ended innings, that resulted in runs for the other team, that basically gave these teams wins. The Mets, right? Everybody believed the Phillies are better than the Mets. Why? Did you see them play against the Mets? They barely beat the Mets. The Mets gave them that series. So let's not act like the Phillies actually played well in that series when the Mets gave it to them. So the Mets were playing, they were the worst team in baseball in June. Yet the Phillies, who everybody seems like, oh, they love the Phillies all of a sudden again, which is hilarious to me because they're the exact same team they were last year. They do the exact same things wrong as they did last year. The only difference is that they're at basically the same pace they were last year. So they're basically on board for 87 wins as well. Good for them, right? That is the most important thing that I look at, right? The Mets beat themselves in that Philly series. I completely believe that. It was obvious. They should have won that Sunday game that the Phillies came back. If the Mets didn't make them stupid errors. Now, these ain't errors from, a guy that never plays. This was Nimmo. This was Lindor, right? These are guys that are really good defensively, if not great defensively. Those are mistakes that never happened with these guys. They were happening in June because everything was going wrong in June. I'm sorry. I don't think the Phillies are a very good team. You can kill me on that. I know Philly fans will definitely come back on me with that because they think they're the greatest team ever. Talk to the Philly fans last year. They made the World Series, and even though they lost, they said, oh, they were a great team. They just didn't show it the entire year. No. How about that? You weren't good. You were the worst defensive team in all of baseball. You're still not very good defensively. And your pitching was an absolute disaster. And then everybody was like, oh, it must have been Rob Thompson. No, the players actually played better. They pitched better. They didn't get, where was the Juan Soto that they added on their team, right? Where's the Josh Hader they added on that team? They weren't there, right? They got a couple of decent bullpen arms, and that was basically it, right? But the people who played better were already on that roster that was one of the worst teams in baseball. They had a good month and a half, and they took it into the playoffs, just like the Mets did in 2015, just like the Nationals did in 2019, and just like the Braves did in 2021. This is not shocking news here, guys. Look at the facts. That's exactly what it is. Now, this is no positivity towards the Mets because they've been absolutely terrible, and they have to play 18 games over 500. Now, I'm going on the fact that I don't think any of these teams that are at the third wild card spot are very good. I think if the Mets played if everybody played to the level they're supposed to, the Mets are better than all those teams in front of them. I think they're better than the Giants. I think they're better than the Phillies. They're obviously better than the Cubs. And I think they're right on par with the Padres, if not better. Because if you play everybody in the same realm here, I think the Padres and the Mets are probably neck and neck because they have a lot of inconsistencies, but when their players play to what they're supposed to, they're very good, right? Because the Padres, everybody kept on saying that the Padres have a better roster than the Mets last year, yet the Mets won, 25 more games more than them? Yeah, they got hot, and they beat the Mets in the playoffs, but we know anybody can beat anybody in the playoffs in a 5-game, 3-game, or 7-game series. I mean, we see this all the time now, right? The MLB playoffs is like the NHL playoffs now. Get in, and anything can happen. And that's why when people are like, oh, it's over. No. I mean, if you could do basic math, it's not over, right? The Mets were 10 games out a week ago. They went on a 6-game winning streak, and they ended up 6.5, and they're hovering around 7 now, right? 1 week can change everything. Let's not act like the Phillies, the Reds, the Brewers, right? Look at their records over the last 2 weeks. They had a 2-week stretch where they had a very good 2 weeks, and that's why they're up where they are. It's not like they had a consistent good season, because that's not true. That's where people don't realize how quickly things can happen. The same way the Mets can go on a 2-week stretch where they're a disaster, the same way where they can have a fantastic 2 weeks and they can be right up on top. It takes 1 week to jump over 3 or 4 teams. The Mets did it last week. The 8 games before the All-Star break, when they went 6-2, they jumped over 3 teams, and at one point they jumped over the Padres for a day until they lost the next 2 games. Like I said, not saying the Mets are good, but we do forget very quickly that 2 out of the 3 teams that won the World Series in our own division got hot at the right time. They weren't very good, right? And when people say, oh, we must sell, we must sell, we must sell, I'm going to tell you this. Just because we think they should sell, don't mean the organization thinks they're going to sell. And the reason why I say that, because if you listen to around baseball, you listen to a lot of reporters talking to organizations around the league, everybody believes if you're within 5 games by the deadline, that you're in it. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think 3 games or less by the deadline is where I think you can be somewhat of buyers, solidify a bullpen a little bit. But other than that, I think you should really think about selling the pieces you have to sell to bring back prospects. But look at it this way, right? The New York Mets are 7 games out at the moment. If they take 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, I'm going to go on a limb here and say they'll probably pass the Padres and the Cubs just during this weekend series, right? It's not that hard to figure out, right? It took a 6-game winning streak, which is not a lot, to jump over 3 teams, and it took them 1 game against the Padres to jump over 4 teams within a 6-game stretch. Excuse me. Well, Kami, I agree with you, but when people go back to that, and I was one that was really pissed off at Epler, but then I really looked at exactly what was the problem with the trade deadline last year. The New York Mets did not want to trade top prospects in their farm system, right? We all talk about how the depleted farm system of the Mets is not good, right? They have to build up their farm system. Well, the problem with the Mets is that they didn't want to trade anybody in their top 10 in their farm system, which is going to be very hard to get quality back. It's just that simple, right? They didn't want to trade any of their pitching prospects, even though at the moment, I believe Tidwell was the only one that was at the top 10 at the time, but all their other pitching prospects, they weren't willing to give up, which I agree with. So the only player that the Mets made available, which was Vientos. Now, just think, for everybody who is, on Vientos' jock, when the Mets decided to finally bring him up, and you got to play him, you got to play him, you got to play him. No other team wanted Mark Vientos in a trade. Remember, he's a top 10 prospect in the Mets system. I can guarantee you probably won't break top 20 in a lot of systems in Major League Baseball. So if the Mets were dangling Vientos for a guy like JD Martinez, like a Josh Bell, like a Brandon Drury, guys like that, and those teams weren't budging and taking Mark Vientos for that type of bat, then what were the Mets supposed to do, right? If the Mets would have gave up Ronnie Mauricio for JD Martinez, people would have went nuts, even though I would have done that, because I see it this way. If you go back, somebody just put up a graphic, I think it was yesterday. Over the last 10 years, the New York Mets are the worst team in baseball at 9% of draft picks making the major leagues. That is absolutely terrible. Last place. How is that even? That shouldn't even be possible. That should not even be possible. So what does that tell you? That tells you, is it the farm system? Is it the prospects just not living up to the hype? Is it scouting? Is it development? It's probably a combination of all that. It's very rare, and people get obsessed with the Atlanta Braves, which is a rarity. Everybody who they bring up seems like they work out. That doesn't happen. That's very rare. So you got to be careful, and you have to choose your prospect wisely. You got to choose your prospects who you believe is going to help this team within the near future. And you got to pick the prospects that you are willing to trade that have value to make your team better. The problem with the Mets last year and why I got mad at Billy Epler is that they did not make that designation. They didn't make that opinion. They didn't make that a priority. It seemed like they were holding on to all of them, which basically, in my opinion, screwed this team in September. Because I always feel if the front office believes in the team, as a team believed in itself last year, and then at the trade deadline, they gave you that garbage, how do you think the players are going to feel? They're probably like, well, what the hell? Does our front office even give a damn about us? Do they believe in us? I truly believe if the Mets made the right moves last year and was willing to trade certain prospects, because you can't hold on to all of them, because you're going to end up like the New York Yankees. Because if you look at 2017, how many guys are still left on that 2017? Right? All those trades they made in 16, the Millers, the Chapmans, getting Gleyber Torres, getting Clint Frazier, getting all these other guys. Basically, the only guy that actually panned out was basically Aaron Judge. You don't want to end up like that, because most of the time, holding on to all those prospects are going to be a major issue, because all of them are not going to work out. And if you're going to put all your hats in all those prospects and just say, I think they're all going to work out, you're going to be very disappointed. Because I guarantee you, your top 10 prospects, if 5 of them work out, that's a lot. The Braves are an anomaly. That doesn't happen all the time. Like the Tampa Bay Rays, if you look at their roster, a lot of them are retreads. They're not guys they drafted except for basically their pitching. Most of their guys are retreads. These are not guys that they're not all 22-year-olds that they brought up out of their system, right? It's not a lot. Their pitching prospects, yes. But look at their lineup. It's a lot of retreads. It's not a lot of young guys. You know, they got Wander Franco, a couple of young guys, but everybody else is all, veteran guys. The guys that never made it anywhere else, but they figured it out in Tampa. Go figure. No, Paul, I agree. They don't, and that's the other thing where people want to get after Cohen, which is hilarious to me. Cohen can take a bad contract and still get a quality player to help this major league roster, right? That's why there was so much talk about Patrick Corbin, and everybody is going crazy because they're like, why would they want Patrick Corbin? It's not about Patrick Corbin. It's about what you can get by taking the contract of Patrick Corbin, right? If you can take Patrick Corbin's contract and do whatever the hell you want with him, you want to throw him in the rotation, throw him in the bullpen as a long man, fine. But it's what you get back. Maybe you might get that really good quality arm out of the bullpen, right? That's the reason why the Mets traded for Chris Flexion's contract to get Trevor Gott, to put another quality major league arm in the bullpen. People just went out of, why would they do that? Why don't they just use Chris Flexion? Chris Flexion is terrible. They took on the contract and DFA'd him to get the quality arm that the Mets need. The Mets don't need great arms in the bullpen. You need quality arms, major league arms that Buck can go to in the 6th inning and say, hey, give me 3 outs. That's what you want. You want trusted guys, not guys that are great. Or of course you want guys that are great every time that comes out of the bullpen. It's not realistic. You need quality arms that can give you outs. Guys that you come in and say, all right, you know what, he's not great, but I know if I put him in this spot, 9 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10 times, he can get the job done, not 4 out of 10 times. So that's where where people are like, oh, the Mets have to sell. No, they don't. They can keep Robinson, they can keep Pham, and they can add on bad contracts to get quality players back and still keep this team together. I'm telling you guys this right now. And if you look around the league, look at all the quotes from all these reporters, from organizations, from league sources, from team sources, right? You hear this all the time. A lot of teams believe that if you're 5 games behind the playoff spot, you're in it, right? Go back to the trade deadline last year and tell me where the Padres and the Phillies were, right? They were near 4-5 games from a playoff spot. There you go. Did those guys sell? No. The Padres added Juan Soto and Josh Hader and Josh Bell. I mean, come on, guys. Like, sometimes, and if the organization, and Steve Cohen said this, he believes a lot of these players are underperforming. He don't believe these guys are bad, which it obviously last year, were they good? They were really damn good. And you could say they had career years, but look at the back of the baseball card. They're very similar to what they did, most of them in their career, right? Marte, career 290 hitter, was hitting where he was supposed to. Alonso, besides average, which was up from his career average, his home runs or RBIs are there. Lindor is on pack with the back of his baseball card. Jeff McNeil, same thing. So if the organization believes that they're underperforming, it's very hard. And they're not just underperforming. They're playing well below average to what the back of the baseball card says. Even if they get close to the back of the baseball cards, this team will automatically be better. Now, is being better enough to make the playoffs? That's TBD, to be determined, right? Because the Mets can go 45-27 and win 87 games and not make the playoffs, right? They can be 18 games over 500 in the next 72 and miss the playoffs by 1 or 2 games. It's just that simple, right? So if the Mets go 45-27, as I said, that's how they get the 87 wins, that might not be enough, but that's a really good second half considering how bad they were. So again, we're not asking guys to overperform. We're asking guys to play to the back of their baseball cards. And I'm not even talking about Verlander or Scherzer. Scherzer and Verlander can pitch the way they've been pitching, which is better what they've done in June and May. And the Mets will be better because Kodai Senga has been pitching really well. And you're going to get Jose Quintana back, which I think was a huge loss for the Mets because he brings stability to the lineup, to the rotation. Why? Not because he's great, because he gives you innings. He's a bulldog. He saves your bullpen. And he really did pitch really well last year for the Cardinals. I'm not expecting him to pitch under a 3 ERA, but what he does, every fifth day, you're going to get a good start, a quality start. Now, I'm not saying really good start where he'll give you 7 innings and 1 run, but he'll give you 6 in the third, 2 runs, 6 innings, 1 run. He'll give you 6 and 2/3 with 3 runs. Easy. Scherzer hasn't been bad. See, that's where you just look at the little bit of, oh, well, he's been bad here. He's been bad there. His last 10 starts, he's been one of the better pitchers in baseball. But he's given up leads. I'll give you that. But he hasn't been bad. Bad is not giving your team a chance. That's not true. In his last 10 starts, he's given his team a chance to win. He has to be better. He's your ace. I'll give you that. But he hasn't been bad. Saying he's bad is wrong. That is wrong. Tyler McGill was bad. David Peterson was bad, right? Scherzer was never near a 10 ERA. Now, Scherzer was near a 5 ERA, but look at his last 10 starts. 4 runs, 3 runs, 2 runs, 3 runs. Now, I agree with you. If all he needs to do is be a little bit better, and he's going to have his ERA under 4 and probably around 3.5. I agree with you. If you watch my video about the grade that I gave him, it wasn't pretty. And I said he hasn't pitched well in big games, but he doesn't pitch every day, every 5th day in a big game. Scherzer hasn't been good, but being bad is David Peterson bad. 10 ERA. That's bad. Tyler McGill, bad. Scherzer has pitched better. Well, BX, exactly. Compared to what Max is, but you're looking at it from a wrong perspective. If you believe that Max Scherzer was going to be last season's Max Scherzer prior to his injury, then, well, yeah. I understand that. But again, Jeff McNeil got paid to be a 300 hitter. Where is he? Right? You can go both ways. Well, Scherzer, again, being bad is being that you haven't pitched well all season. That's wrong. That is completely wrong. He has not pitched like David Peterson or Tyler McGill. That's bad. Now, he hasn't pitched like Scherzer the ace, and that's 100% true. And you see what Scherzer does. Scherzer still has good stuff. The problem he falls into, and Yamin just said it, but you're too crazy about the money. Because last time Aaron Judge is getting paid $40 million. He's not even playing. So that's a bad contract, right? Easy, but I can say the same thing about Tyler McGill, David Peterson, Kodai Senga. I can say that about all those guys, Justin Verlander, all of them, right? But what about the times he didn't give up leads? I agree, Mid. But again, I'm not saying Scherzer has been good, but saying he's bad is moronic. Because look at his last 10 starts. He's been better than everybody in this rotation over his last 10 starts. He has been. Look at the stats. It's not excuses. The team is bad. They're underperforming. And again, that's a losing record, obviously. But if you listen to Met fans, you think the Padres are 40 games over 500. Yeah, BX, that's not happening. Again, see, this is where people get stupid. Why would a team, if you said that Scherzer's been bad, why would anybody give you a prospect for Max Scherzer? Even if you take on his money. If he's been bad, then why would anybody take him? Even if you're paying his money. So that's why you have to pay attention and think. Why would anybody take Scherzer if he's bad? Everybody just said, oh, he's bad or he sucks. So why would anybody take him, even if you take on the money? If he's not going to help the Mets, why would he help another team? Steven, you sure about that? Because Yu Darvish is not the same pitcher. Musgrove is good, but I'm telling you right now, I don't think Musgrove is very good. I swear to you, this guy is doing something. Because all of a sudden, this guy's good out of nowhere. First half of last year, he was garbage. All of a sudden, second half, he figured things out. Blake Snell, having a career year. Last year, terrible. Be careful. Blake Snell, contract year. Shocking. Oh, BX, that might be true. That might be true. Now, it's hard to make that argument. But, I mean, big games, he has not been there, right? But we can also, everybody wanted Chris Bassett back. Chris Bassett in every big game blew up every game too, right? So, again, Max Scherzer hasn't been good, but to say he's bad and then you want to trade him for a prospect, how does that make sense? I can assure you that Max Scherzer would help this Mets team more than the prospect you're probably going to get back that's probably not going to be as good as you think. I don't know because, listen, besides the game against Musgrove, the Mets actually pitched well. David Peterson pitched well. Blake Snell was out of his mind, and the Mets still had a chance to win in the ninth. Right? If it wasn't for Manny Machado, would the Padres would have won that game? Probably, but they would have barely won that game. So I do think the Padres and the Mets are on the exact same level. I think they're all underperforming, and it just ended up being two underperforming teams. Somebody had to take 2 out of 3. It just ended up being the Padres. Because if you really look at the game, the Padres pitched a little bit better than the Mets. That's basically it. David Peterson basically stuck with Blake Snell. You know what I'm saying? So, well, Steven, that's what I'm saying. the Mets, I do believe that the Mets in the last month and a half have scored more runs per game than the San Diego Padres. That makes no sense considering that the Padres should have just 3, 4, 5. Soto, Bogarts, and Machado should be automatically better than the Mets. But you know what? They don't score runs. They're another team that, everybody wants to talk about Juan Soto. Bring him to the Mets. Juan Soto is terrible in the clutch, at least since he's been a Padre. Xander Bogaerts is not having a good season. Manny Machado is having a good season, but he's another one. Look at his numbers with runners in scoring position. Not very good. So, and the Mets have been scoring runs. It's just that, unfortunately, even for, it's been the whole rotation, and that's been the bigger concern, right? We're not, and that the frustrating thing is that the rotation doesn't have to be as good as it's supposed to be. That's what's frustrating about that. Yeah, BX, sure. All of a sudden, Soto's going to be good for the Mets, right? The same guy that got traded and in pressure situations folded in San Diego. So you want him to come to New York where there's even more pressure. Be careful what you wish for. Because Juan Soto, everybody chose the San Diego Padres as soon as they made that trade to go to the World Series. Juan Soto has been an absolute disaster in San Diego. That's fine, BX. You know who also loves Citi Field? Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander. You know how many guys said that all the time and completely didn't do the job? Come on. Like, I don't care what he says, right? It's easy being a national, wearing a Nationals jersey and playing in Citi Field. It's different putting on a New York Mets uniform, and now the pressure is on to do the job with that uniform on. Big difference, right? Big difference, right? We saw this all the time in basketball, right? Everybody wants to play at the Garden, but they don't want to put on that Knicks uniform and play in the Garden under that pressure with the New York across their chest. No, BX, he never liked the Mets, but again, the point of the matter is, look, I mean, come on, guys. Look at it realistically. Well, who doesn't take the money? All right. I can give you about 100 players that are overpaid in baseball. That Judge will never live up to that contract. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Right? The best. Listen, I'm gonna make it known right now. Francisco Lindor's contract is gonna live up better than the Aaron Judge contract. You know why? Because of the fact that Aaron Judge, not only in his career, always has these freak injuries. Yeah, he ran into a wall, made a great catch. Well, guess what? Freak injuries means you're not available for your team. Last time I checked, Lindor, at the very least, is available. What did he miss? 3 games in 3 years? And people just think that in this world now of sports where there's maintenance days and sit these guys down because they're tired, right? And everybody's like, oh, look at Lindor, look at Alonso. These guys play every day. Name me how many guys that have huge contracts in Lindor that play 150 games, 160 games, because that's what Lindor does, right? You'll be lucky for Aaron Judge to play 100 games this year, right? Nobody lives up to these big contracts. That's why when people say, oh, he's not worth that contract, who is? Is Carlos Carrasco worth $10 million? No. But you know what? The market says he is, right? People are like, oh, how can you give Lindor that contract? Pay attention to when that contract happened. A lot of shortstops were going to become available. There was a lot of talk that Lindor, Seager, and Correa were all going to get $300+ million in that offseason. That was the talk. Remember there was talk in that offseason that owners were colluding to not give these players contracts? Remember how many players going into 2020 into 2021 where they weren't even signed yet until basically the end of spring training because teams were colluding because they didn't want to spend big money on players because they wanted to reset the market? Remember that? That's why that Lindor contract looks huge. But at that time, there was projections that Lindor, Seager, and Correa were all going to get $300+ million. Remember, Seager took less money. Correa took a 2-year deal with an option with the Twins. You have to look at the scenario at that time, not now saying, oh, look, you got Correa that basically didn't get what Lindor in. Look at Bogarts. Look at Seager. But those guys were in a situation where owners didn't want to pay. No, a lot of those guys were signed very late into the season. Correa was signed basically at spring training. Seager was after the winter meetings. So we have to look at it that way. All big contracts are usually bad. You know what I want from a big contract? And this is what I want to talk about with Lindor. Now, numbers are going to dwindle down as they get older. That's just common sense. We all know that, right? But what I know is that Lindor is going to be out there every day and give 110%. How many guys can he say that? 2. Every day he will be there. Every day he plays. He'll give you 159 games or more every year. And I can guarantee you in year 6 or 7 of that deal, I guarantee you he'll play at least 150 games. You know, he's getting older, so he'll miss a game here or there. But you know what? Lindor probably is one of the better players that got a big contract the way he's played over the last 3 seasons. Remember, first half of 2021, his first season with the Mets, wasn't good, which made his numbers look bad at the end of the season. But look at his second half in 2021. Very damn good. Ever since he had that game against the Yankees, that 3-home run game, he took off. 2022, really good year. 25 home runs, 100 RBIs. He's on pace this year for 30 home runs and 100 RBIs from a shortstop who's going to have better numbers than every other shortstop, almost across the board, except for average. Well, look at that. So in 3 years and year 2 of the contract, he's had better years than most players that got big contracts. He's going to have a better first year than Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is going to have big home run numbers, but guess what? He's probably going to play about 85 games less than Francisco Lindor. The Yankees might not make the playoffs because Aaron Judge is not on the field. I don't care how that is. I don't care if it's a freak injury or not. Guess what? Lindor, which is a freak injury, jammed his finger in a hotel door in LA. Remember that? Missed 1 game. Came back. Basically was playing with basically a fractured finger the rest of the year and still put up 25 and 100. Right? His wife had a baby, didn't even miss a game. Now, I'm not saying that was right or wrong, and I would never, fault a guy for taking a couple of days off for his wife. That's family. The hell with baseball at that point. But look at that. Just look at it. The guy wants to play. And I'm not saying Aaron Judge doesn't want to play. But you know what? It's very cozy for Aaron Judge. And to this day, you're going to tell me if Judge was in a contract year this year, you don't think he would have been back already? Let's be honest, guys. Come on. Now, I think Judge is one of the best players in baseball, if not the best. But if he didn't have that contract to be sitting on right now, you don't think he would be out there probably 2 weeks ago? You don't think he would have came back earlier than he was supposed to? Come on. Let's be real. He's sitting on a cozy contract now, right? I guarantee, the Yankees have been hovering over that wild card, 1 game in front of a wild card spot, 1 game back of a wild card spot, back and forth. And this is not a negativity for Aaron Judge, but I mean, most players and most people, let's be honest, that knows they have the money in their pocket already is not going to rush to come back. Well, Steven, they said he's not going to have the surgery, but he will have it in the offseason. But that type of surgery with the ligament in the toe, if you look at it, it happens a lot in football and basketball. Those surgeries usually are not – it's like a 50-50 projection that it works or not. So a guy who is 6'7", 280 pounds, that's not easy to come back. It's his right big toe. And again, if you look how Judge bats, he leans on that right foot for all his power in the batter's box. So yeah. Well, Rocky, it's not even turf toe. It's worse than that. It's worse than turf toe. His ligament, the ligament that attaches your toe, well, the big ligament in your big toe is fully detached. And it's not turf toe. Turf toe is more of a damaging around the bone. You know, it's a stretch of the ligament. It's a combination of everything. But it's a ligament that is completely torn off the bone. And again, Right Wing just said he's a big dude. He uses a lot of his power. If you look at when he bats, just take a look really quick. Google Aaron Judge's swing. If you look, he sits back. Right when he's about to swing his bat, he leans back and puts the pressure on his right leg. And all of his power is on his right leg. And that's why he gets that amazing swing, amazing bat speed, amazing power that he has is all from that lower body. Because he don't do a lot with his upper body. From his waist up, it's very smooth. It's very like just quick. It's not even quick. It's just natural. A natural, because he's so big, it's just natural, easy swing. All that power is coming from his legs and from his power of his right side. He leans back and then takes, and all that 280 pounds is leaning on that right foot, that right leg. And it's not even about hurting more of his toe. It's about, making up for that toe. Maybe he'll put more pressure on that calf, on that thigh, on your upper leg, or maybe more on your back. He's going to use more of his upper body that he never does with his swing. So he might hurt his back. And it's just a trickle-down effect. That it's not even about the toe. If he can play with the pain, it's not going to hurt him more because the ligament's already detached. So there's no ligament to rip off. With that, it's just a matter of, is he going to, use another part of his body to make up for the lack of strength in that toe that might cause another injury. That's the problem. Yeah, exactly. No, Paul, he's not a power lifter, but he's a power hitter. And again, I just gave you an example. Remember, he's batting right-handed, and look, right before his swing, you'll see him go like this. And all the power, all his weight is on that right side, all the way down to his feet. And that's where he gets that massive power. From the waist down is where he gets most of his power, about 85% of it. Because when you look at his waist up, if you just take a zoom shot of his waist up, it looks like he's not even swinging hard because he's not. All that power is from his lower half. Correct, Grant. That's the problem. And that's why they're going to be very – and listen, if I'm the Yankees, I think it's completely stupid to let this guy come back. Let him rest that toe for the rest of the year. Yeah, it might hurt you for a playoff spot in the playoffs, whatever. But you just got this guy for 9 years. You don't want to get him back this year and barely make the playoffs and basically do no damage in the playoffs, lose again, and now he's going to be compromised in the later years of his contract. That's dangerous. This guy is on the other side of 30 now. So, but again, I'm not a Yankees fan. Let him come back and let him – hopefully, look, I love to see great players play. I don't care if you're a Yankee, a Brave. As long as you're not beating my team, I can care less. I hate seeing injuries. Like I said, unfortunately for Judge, he made a great catch in the worst position possible, in the worst area of Dodger Stadium. I went to Dodger Stadium, and I love the nostalgia. I love the old feeling with the new amenities. But, I'm going to Fenway next week to see the Mets. Oh, and that's a FYI. Hi, I'm going to Boston. So I'll be at Fenway with the 7 line on that Saturday. I'm going to fly in Friday morning. Unfortunately, I got to give my buddy Shay to my dad for a couple of days because he is a kitten, and obviously I can't leave a cat here on his own. That's for a couple of days. That's just neglect, and I would never do that. Got to give him to my dad so he can run around with my dad and drive him nuts for a couple of days, and I'm shocked. Shay must be sleeping because he just ate before I came live. Usually he'll pop up on the live and usually pop up on the table and block the camera, but he's not right now. Actually, I see him right over there laying down. So there you go. So second half of the season, ladies and gentlemen, the New York Mets have 72 games to go. At the moment, 7 games out of a wild card spot. The good news is that there's 72 games to go. The other good news is a lot of these guys are underperforming. If they go back to the level that they should be playing at the back of the baseball cards, I don't even think they need to get to that point. They need to be close to that close to the back of the baseball cards, and I think it would just be a lot better than what we've seen in the first half. And if they do that, and again, the Mets can go 45-27, be 18 games over 500, exactly what they need to do to win any 87 games. Anything better is just icing on the just a cherry on top. But if they go 45-27, that's 18 games over 500. That gets them to 87 wins. Now, that might not be enough to get that third wild card spot, but right now the Giants lead the third wild card. They are, let me see, 1 second. They are, sorry, I'm just checking really quick. They are 49-41, right? They got, how many games? I got to do some quick math there. They did 90, so they got 72 games as well, right? So if they got, let's see, 49, that's 45. So if they win 45 games, they have 94 wins. I don't know if they're going to win 40. They're going to go 18 games over 500. They're hovering around 8-9 games over 500 for the entire season. They're going to play 9 games better. I don't see that. So I think if the Mets, I do think that 87 wins is going to get a wild card spot. It's just a matter of the Mets might fall into a situation with tiebreakers. Once again, boo-hoo for the Mets. And that goes with the Padres, even though the Mets took 2 out of 3 in Citi Field. Padres took 2 out of 3, so that's a wash. So now it's going to come down to win percentage, I believe, or division wins or record or whatever they use to decide. The Phillies, on the other hand, right? I think the Mets have a game up on the Phillies in overall series games won. The Brewers, the same thing. So the tiebreakers might come into a situation, right? How many of these teams do you think are going to have over 87 wins? From the Giants down, the Giants, the Brewers, the Phillies, the Cubs, the Padres. How many teams? I could probably give you 1, maybe 2 teams that might hit the 87 mark. And remember, if the Giants, who have 49 wins right now, if they go 500, which would be, let's see, which would be 36-36, right? That's 85 games, right? So if they play 2 games over 500, that's 87. Could they do that? Yeah, absolutely. You'll see what they do at the trade deadline, but yeah. I agree, Rocky, and I've been saying this for a while. If the pitching over the last 2 weeks have been pitching the way, for the most part, the way they should be pitching, right? Max Scherzer has pitched better over the last 10 games than he did prior, including Verlander. They both have a full run better than what they did prior to that stretch. Everybody has been pitching better. I don't think Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander have to pick to what they've been in years past. I think they have to be a little bit better than what they are now. And what I mean is that Scherzer, if he doesn't give up leads, if he gets leads and holds them, can still go 6 innings, 1 or 2 runs. That, I'm telling you right now, that's enough to win ball games. Same thing with Verlander. They just need to be a little bit better, especially with Quintana coming back very, very soon. And then we're going to start with Justin Verlander on tomorrow against the Dodgers, which I'm a little shocked about. I would have started Senga since he had all that time rest, but you're going to get three of your best guys in this series. So you're going to get Verlander, Scherzer, and Senga in some type of order. I think Scherzer's going to go on Saturday and Senga on Sunday. So we'll see what happens. So I think 87 wins is going to get that third wild card. The Mets have to go 45-27. Can they do that? Sure they can. If they perform too close to their capabilities, I think they can easily play 18 games over 500. But it's going to come down to the starting pitching. And if they pitch like they have been over the last 2 weeks, there should be no reason why the Mets can't have good stretches. If you go 7-3 or better for the majority of your 10-game stretches and occasionally knock into 6-4, you actually might get to 87 wins. Possible? We'll see. Well, yeah, Jay, that's what I'm saying. That's all they have to do. If they go 6 plus 2 or 3 runs, they can actually do that. That's fine because the records have shown when the Mets starters go 6 innings or more, the Mets are like 22, 23 games over 500. I don't even think they lost 10 games yet when their starter goes 6 innings or more. So that's all they have to do because as soon as you get to the 6 inning mark, there's guys in your bullpen that are a lot more trusted than the Jeff Brighams of the world in the 5th inning, which hurts you down the stretch of those games. Yeah, the Dodgers are going to pitch their best. I think Julio Urias is going to start tomorrow against Verlander. Look at his numbers this year. He hasn't been very good. I think he has over a 4 ERA. I think Verlander has pitched better. So, yeah. And I believe Kershaw, I'm going to check really quickly, guys. Give me a second. I just want to give you the matchups. Oops. Sorry. So, yeah, Urias, who has a 4.76 ERA, and everybody who's killing Verlander, he had that ERA a month ago. He's now down to a 3.60. Right? So, that's actually pretty damn good considering the fact that he almost had a 5 ERA not more than a month ago, right? Yeah, okay, Paul, but that's ifs for every team. If the Padres play better, they will get to those many wins, right? Right? That bad Mets team that everybody loves did take 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, who the Mets got Scherzer thrown out of a game because he got suspended because of sticky stuff, didn't have Verlander, and Peterson and guys like McGill were pitching in that series. There is a lot of ifs with every team. If the Giants win 40 games, they can get to 89 wins, right? There's ifs for every team. But don't tell me that the Mets are not better than any one of those teams ahead of them or at least at the same level. I still believe that the Phillies aren't as good as the Mets. If the Mets play to their capabilities, right? The Mets were playing terrible in June, yet they almost won a series against the Phillies that the Mets gave them. Yet the Phillies are 7 games over 500, 6 or 7 games over 500? Are the Phillies that good? No, they're not. It's about a 15-game stretch that each one of these teams had that the Mets are that these teams are in front of the Mets. So these are not teams that are having 40, 50-game stretches where they're out of their minds. Each one of those teams had a really good 2-week stretch. And that's why they're above the Mets, because the Mets really haven't had a 2 good week stretch. They had a 10-game stretch, which is pretty good, and an 8-game stretch that is 6-2. If they stretch that out over 2 weeks, they'll be right up there with everybody else. Because if you look at the other teams in front of them, a lot of them are going 5-5 in 10 games, 6-4, not much better than that. Paul, what do you mean it was just 3 games? 3 games where? Okay, but the Padres, the Padres are better than the Mets all of a sudden because they just had a good 3 games, right? Or did they? They had one good game. Because last time I checked, the only time when the offense came alive was the Sunday game. And that was Machado mostly. Right? You can talk about ifs all you want, but it is a 3-game stretch, but it was actually an 8-game stretch where they were 6-2, right? Nobody cares that the Mets swept the Arizona Diamondbacks, who were one of the better teams in the National League. Nobody cares about that. I agree, Easy, 100%. But we're talking about teams that are in front of us that aren't that good. Right? 5-6 games over 500. Listen, the Mets got to get to 500 before we talk about any of this. I don't even think we need that much. Again, we're looking too much at just a month by month situation. Again, if the Mets flip that, if they go 19-7 in July, right, in the rest of July, that's what? That's 8 games over 500. That puts you 2 games over 500. I'm going to guarantee you, if the Mets do that and they get the 2 games over 500 by August 1st, they will be buyers. Because I can guarantee you, they would be 2 or 3 games behind the last wild card spot. Because there's nobody in a 10-game stretch that went better than 7-3. Even the Mets almost did that. The Phillies went 7-3. The Reds went 7-3. The Brewers went 6-4. The Phillies 6-7. I'm sorry. The Padres 6-4. Everybody else 5-5. Again, it all comes down to quality pitching. If they get that, we'll be good to go. So it'll be Verlander tomorrow against Urias, TBD and TBD. So Scherzer's pitching on Sunday. So Senga's pitching on Saturday. We don't know who's pitching for the Dodgers yet. It hasn't been determined yet on MLB on the MLB app. So we know it's going to be Verlander, Scherzer, and Senga in some type of order. We do know Verlander is pitching tomorrow, and Scherzer's pitching on Sunday. So that probably means Saturday, Senga's pitching. So the Mets got their 3 best pitchers. Whatever you want to say about them, 3 best pitchers. Now, it's just going to come down to quality pitching. I'm pretty confident if the Mets starters go 6 innings at least, the Mets will win 2 out of 3. And it has nothing to do with the Dodgers are really good or not. It's just the fact that the stat shows no matter who the Mets play, if their starters go 6 innings or more, the Mets are 23 games over 500 when their starters go 6 innings or more. That's not just being positive. That's a fact. The stat shows it. So if the Mets don't even have 10 losses yet at this point, when their starters go 6 innings or more, they have a better chance than not than winning that ball game. And there's a pretty good chance, Joel, that Quintana will pitch in this homestand, probably the White Sox series. So with that said, guys, we're going to end it here. Welcome to the second half. 72 games left for our New York Mets. They got about 15 games or so until the trade deadline. That 15-game stretch is going to decide if they're going to be buyers or sellers. In my case, if they're 3 games or less from a wild card spot, they can be buyers. If they're more than that, in my opinion, I think they should sell what they can to get some prospects back. But a lot of organizations nowadays think if you're within 5 games, you're in it. So we'll see how that goes. Oh, well, I've had the AC on most of the day. Both ACs on, so it's actually freezing in the house right now. It's just that my kitten is just overheated a lot. For some reason, he's overheated. So I've been giving him a lot of water, and I just trying to cool the house down for him. So I'm freezing right now. I got shorts on with a hoodie on. So don't get me wrong, I'm sweating. But I'm just trying to not, get it like a cold sweat. That would be bad. So, yes, and Apple TV tomorrow. So you know what that means, right? I will be live tomorrow for Mets Dodgers. I can't go to the game tomorrow, but I'm going to the game on Sunday. So tomorrow, Apple TV. So you know where to tune, right? Right here on Talking Mets and Rob. I will have the game for you, Mets Dodgers. We'll have the audio right here on the channel. Paul, I didn't time you out. I haven't even touched my mouse. You can probably see my hands the whole time. I'm Italian, so I do this all the time. So I didn't time you out. There's moderators. Again, maybe they didn't like what you said, even though it's an opinion. Again, I don't block anybody unless you're racist or you disrespect somebody in a bad way. Other than that, I can care less. Your opinion's your opinion. We don't have to agree. That's the whole point of this channel, right? Is giving everybody's opinion. So with that said, second half starts tomorrow. It's make or break for the New York Mets. Put up or shut up, as somebody said in the comments. Let's see if they're going to put it up or they're going to shut up. and this team will be dismantled if they don't put up. We shall see. So, with that said, everybody have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow night. Remember, Apple TV, so come here and enjoy the game. Let's hope for a Mets win. I'll see you guys tomorrow night for Mets pregame, half hour before, 50 minutes before the start of the game. Mets game, Apple TV. If you don't have Apple TV or don't want to be bothered with their nonsense, come on here. We can have our conversations. I will provide the audio for everybody who doesn't have Apple TV. So with that said, everybody have a great night. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. See you tomorrow night. Let's have the second half that nobody is expected. It would shock a lot of people. Have a great night, guys. Let's go Mets.